Hello and welcome back to the Premier League Lowdown here on the Football Deck. I'm your host this week, Greg Wood, and I'm joined as ever by George Allen.
Greg, it's lovely to be here. I'm happy to be back with you because I missed you last week.
Yeah, sorry about that one, George, but an excellent episode last week between yourself and Archie, and I'm looking forward to getting back to a normal bit of rhythm this week. And let's dive straight back into a bit of the news, George, and let's talk about the merry-go-round of managers at Wolves. So we've seen, obviously, a change at Wolves recently, and we've seen that Gary O'Neill was reportedly turned down a return to the club. What have you got to say on this, George?
I mean, who knows what's going on at Wolves, firstly, because they gave Vitor Pereira a new contract in the summer, and you thought, okay, so maybe there's some confidence here that they've got what it takes to really push on this season, because they've, whether you say fallen off that kind of high horse they were in the first couple of years in the Premier League, I'm sure they'll have wanted to push on and kind of make inroads into potentially being one of those more mid-table European football chasing sides again. And clearly it's not worked. They're the only side in the Premier League without a win. Gary O'Neill, I thought, did a decent job at Wolves the last time he was there. You know, he kept them up, kept them in a, I'm trying to think of the word, sustainable position, let's say that. And obviously he knows how things work. But when you're returning to clubs, sometimes it just doesn't work. We saw David Moyes do it at West Ham and it went really, really well. It's clearly that Gary O'Neill thinks, I'm not the man for the job here and there's potentially better options. I've seen Erik ten Hag's name thrown around in there. I'd love to see that just because I think actually he is a really good manager. And I think with a board that backs him, he would show how good he is. Whether Wolves is the right club for him, I'm not sure, but I think that's a real test. But I think they've got to get this appointment right. That's the main thing. We'll get into Wolves later on, of course, when we talk about their fixture this week. But they've got to get this right if they want to stay up this season, because at the moment, they're only looking one way, and that's the Championship.
Yeah, I agree, George. This appointment is crucial. But is it too late already, George, or can this manager get the bounce and get them back into sort of a race, or do you think it's curtains for Wolves?
It's a really tough one because we've seen last weekend, particularly with West Ham, winning a game and they've put themselves right back up in there as to can they now build on this. I think if Wolves can get a win, I mean, I saw the Premier League table. The Premier League put something out of the Premier League table at this point last year to what it is this year after 10 games. And Wolves were rock bottom last year with a goal difference of -13 or something. And, we probably thought, oh, are they going to struggle here? And they turned it round. So there's still a chance. We've only played 10 games. There's a long, long way to go. But from what we've seen so far, it doesn't look great. They need something to change there. That's the thing, and it needs to change fast.
Yeah, I think watch this space with Wolves, and I think a manager has to be appointed within the next 2 weeks. So we'll obviously keep you up to date with all the news you need to know here on the Premier League Lowdown. Another one I want to talk to you about is Arteta and injury woes. Obviously, Victor Gyökeres picking up a knock and coming off at half-time. How do you think this will affect Arsenal, and how are they coping? They seem pretty good come the Champions League, but do you think this will affect them coming through?
I think it is a really good win for Arsenal in midweek in the Champions League. I mean, the way that they are winning games at the moment, keeping the clean sheets and finding the goals is massive. And of course, Victor Gyökeres going down with an injury, I think hurts Arsenal more than actually people expect, because I think Gyökeres has been a really good signing for Arsenal because he gives them that striker outlet. He's not scoring ridiculous numbers like Haaland does, and I don't know if he was ever going to do that in the Premier League. Look, maybe he'll prove us wrong, but what he is doing is he's providing that outlet, he's providing that option, which is also allowing others to get chances as well. He can play people in as well. He's involved in lots of different goals, lots of different chances created for Arsenal. So I think this one does hurt them a little bit more. We've seen that Arsenal struggle when they don't have a focal point up front sometimes. It's just having that striker to bounce off almost. So if they can get Gyökeres back quickly, I don't think it derails them, but this is potentially where Arsenal will start to slip up. Not saying that this Gyökeres injury will cause it, but injuries in general to key players could make them struggle a little bit more than they expected to or have over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and I think they've got a potential banana skin of a game this weekend, and not having that focal point could really challenge them. So it's one I want to keep a close eye on at the moment. Now, I know we've had the Champions League since we last spoke, George, and Spurs with a successful and comprehensive win on the night. But I wanted to talk to you about the incident in their last Premier League game with Van der Ven and Jed Spence walking past the manager at the end of the game, not acknowledging the handshake. Did you have any thoughts on this? Because as a man that loves his club, I hate seeing stuff like this because it gives the media something and us to talk about. And I don't want that. I want there to be settled and in the sort of the squad happy houses as such, George. What are your thoughts on things like this?
Yeah, I think it's one of those which it just creates an atmosphere that you don't really need or want around the club. And look, it's great that Thomas Frank's been able to come out and say that they have apologised and that all is done. But it's just one of those that creates almost a stigma, a negative stigma around the club when you've got things like that happening. Look, Mickey van der Ven very much has repaid Thomas Frank for his goals in recent weeks and his goal in midweek. Can we talk about it for a second, Greg? I'm assuming you've seen it because Absolutely. I've never seen a centre-back do something like that.
Yeah, no. The power and just the sheer drive to go through. It looked at one stage though that the players were literally opening for him. It was like, yeah, what do we do here? Do we commit? What's he doing? And I think it took a lot of the other players by surprise as well. But yeah, the power and drive that he shows is ridiculous.
Yeah, great strike it was. And I'm sure Thomas Frank won't be minding too much after all of that. But yeah, Tottenham, I think there's real opportunity for them. If they can stay consistent. We've seen some of those inconsistencies creep in the last few weeks, so they need to iron those out. They've got a big game this weekend, of course. We'll get onto it soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely, George. So let's not waste any time then, George. Let's give you an opportunity to talk about your side, and let's talk about Spurs versus Manchester United.
Right then, United come into this one with that 3-game winning streak undone. It was really, really sad because that man's going to have to wait for his hair to get cut a little bit longer. But United are still unbeaten in 4, which is even bigger because it's been a long time since they did that under Ruben Amorim. And even though United did draw 2-2 at the City ground, I think there was still a lot of positives in there. Look, we still saw some of the things that we have seen from United this season. Negative points as such, switching off at the start of the second half. But I mean, Ahmad scored an absolute screamer at the end of that one, and he's nearly won it right at the end as well, if not for a stunning block off the line. Spurs, of course, come into it with a really disappointing result against Chelsea. So it makes it interesting the way that this one matches up. United have struggled at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the last couple of years, really. The last time we won, I think, was in one of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's final games. Cavani, Ronaldo, and Rashford scored in a 3-0 win. We were 2-0 up with Jadon Sancho and Rashford scoring in Ten Hag's first season a couple of years ago and bottled that to draw 2-2. Last season, we didn't have much joy there at all. Played well in some aspects, but almost undid that good work by going down in terms of the scoreline early on. So there's a real opportunity for United. If Spurs play the same as they did last week against Chelsea with an XG of 0.1, if United can punish teams, and look, we've seen United created a lot of chances this season. Can they convert them? They've started to do that more in recent weeks. Can they keep that consistency going forward? I think that makes this game a lot easier for them. I said that Forest game is going to be more difficult than the Spurs game in terms of to keep this 5-win run going thing. Because I think Spurs are a side that give you opportunity. And look, they've been more defensively sound this season under Thomas Frank. Look, we could go there on Saturday and they're a really difficult team to break down, but also they could just be massively open. You don't know what you're going to get, really. And we've seen that in the last few weeks, as I mentioned, with those inconsistencies. So, look, I will be confident just because United, the atmosphere is good around the club at the moment. I'm going to say that United will win 2-1. Who knows how close that will be? Who knows if Spurs will go ahead first? I think if United go ahead first, then they don't lose the game. They've got the first goal quite a lot in recent weeks, which I think has been really helpful. You look at the game at Anfield, you look at the game against Brighton, Sunderland, all those games that they've won, they've gone ahead first. So coming from behind will be difficult, but I think they will get the win in this one. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win.
George, I agree with absolutely everything you've just said. So I think, as you rightly pointed out, I think Forest would have been the more difficult game for Manchester United because I believe that Spurs suit Manchester United in the way they set up a lot more. some of the best performances I have seen from Manchester United this season have been against what we would say are the better opposition. Although they lost on that opening day against Arsenal, I thought the performance was very good.
Yeah.
And we've seen signs of it through other games in the league. Manchester United like a side that will come at them. It leaves the more open at the back, and Manchester United have been seen to be almost a bit of a counter-acting side at times. And Nottingham Forest sat very, very deep and made it very difficult for Manchester United to create opportunities. And I just think that after that equaliser, I thought Manchester United were going to get the winner because Forest looked like they also wanted the winner, and it was making the game a lot more open, which suited Manchester United. So I'm completely in agreement with you. And after watching that dreadful Tottenham performance against Chelsea last week, as you sort of pointed out with the stats, although Spurs did have a convincing win in the Champions League, I'm not convinced that this weekend will be a return to form. I think Manchester United offer a little too much creativity. I know he's had a lot of slack, but I was actually really impressed by Casemiro again at the weekend.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's something building slowly at Manchester United. And I'm going to go for a really big 2-1 win for Manchester United. And I say really big because I think it's a statement 5 undefeated, really puts them in the Champions League mix, which, to be honest with you, George, as a fan, that's got to be something that you're pleased with at this stage of the season. Yeah. Compared to, where was it last season? 17th, was it, George?
Well, we finished 15th, but we were, at this point, we're 2 points off second, which is absolutely ridiculous. So
yeah. Exactly that. So, yeah, something to build on, George. So, okay, let's move on quickly. Let's go to Everton versus Fulham, George.
Right then, Everton versus Fulham. I mean, this is one, you see two sides which, if you came to this game last week, we would have gone, right, well, Fulham, we said Fulham are really in trouble. Everton, it was kind of, they've had some difficult fixtures, but there's still some promise in there. A good draw against Sunderland, I think, for Everton. That's a really good result because we've seen how difficult it is to go to the stadium alike. Fulham, absolutely massive win against Wolves. I think Wolves would have thought, right, okay, this is a game that we could potentially get something in. And obviously that's been the sacking of Vitor Pereira in the end because it's not happened. And that was a real opportunity for them. So they ended their 4-game losing run. And Fulham will go into this one knowing it's going to be a tough game again, but they've got that momentum to build on. Everton probably need a win. They've not won since the 5th of October in the last minute against Crystal Palace, which was a great win as well. They've got Grealish, of course, back now. He played last week after being out for the Man City game. So it's opportunity for Everton again. I think Iliman Ndiaye is looking fantastic at the moment as well. So Everton have goals in their team, which I don't think we've been able to say over the last few years. That's one of the big differences, which makes them a lot more secure. It's just whether they can be defensively stable as well. We've seen that they've had mistakes in them. I think back to that game against Brighton where James Tarkowski's, given it away a couple of times, I think, and they've got away with one. So if they can be defensively sound, I think Everton should comfortably win this one. But I think there's always space for that mistake. So I think Fulham will score, but I'm going to back Everton. I think the Hill Dickinson Stadium, they've made it their own. It's been one of those good stadium moves. And I think that's one of the things that can just help them over the line a little bit. Maybe not such be a 12th man, but actually it just gives you that little bit extra. So I'm going to go for Everton 2, Fulham 1.
Yeah, I'm, again, sort of in line with you, George, but I'm going to be a little bit kinder. I'm going to start with the score. I'm going to go with a 2-0 Everton win. I watched Everton against Sunderland, and they created an awful lot of opportunities before sort of the equaliser that came in that we'll get to after. There was a lot of opportunities for Everton to kill that game off. There was a really bad miss. I can't remember who it fell to, but Grealish put one ball in at the back post and it flies over the bar. But I just think that Everton are building something, and being at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, I'm going to go for a good day for the home fans and a 2-0 win. So, all right, George, we've talked about your side. Let's move on to mine. And a more positive outlook from me this week, George. So, go on, you start us off. West Ham versus Burnley. What do you see happening?
Oh, it's a difficult one to predict, really, because if, again, you'd come to me last week and West Ham hadn't got a big win against Newcastle, I don't think any of us expected West Ham to turn Newcastle over the way that they did. I think you would have backed Burnley potentially more so in this one, but it's completely different now because West Ham have come into this one. Look, we chatted before this started and you said that they were great value for money, and do you know what I think? From what it looked like, I didn't watch the game, but from what it looked like, that's spot on, and that's the West Ham that I think we've become used to know in the Premier League. This is a very different season almost from the start that we've seen for West Ham. And if they can keep that consistency, keep that momentum, build on that win, which is a big win as well. Look, 3-1 win, a late goal to finish it off as well. That just brings a lot of confidence. And with Burnley, it's a side that you should be able to beat. West Ham should be able to beat Burnley. They had a tough game last week against Arsenal, and we're never going to get anything out of that realistically. But Burnley have also showed that they are a decent side, particularly in these almost 6-pointer clashes, sides around where they are in the league. So it's a really difficult one to go for. I talked about being at home for the Everton game, and look, one stadium move that hasn't been successful, we can probably say, is West Ham's London Stadium. But I still think it being at home just adds something a little bit different for it. If it was at Turf Moor, I'd probably say Burnley are going to win. But I'm going to err on the side of West Ham's momentum. It's going to take them through it. It's going to be tight, but I think West Ham will win it 2-1.
George, I really hope you're right. Now, I wish there were some bubbles floating around me right now, George, but no, it was the first time that I've been able to smile as a West Ham fan last weekend, because what a performance, and a performance that I wasn't expecting. Players really turning up, and what a difference having our actual best 11 on the pitch. Having Wan-Bissaka back, I spoke to you off stream about what he offers, not just in defence as well, but it's an improvement over Walker-Peters all day, every day. And Paqueta really putting in a performance as a leader on that pitch, and actually did a lot of work up front. Shout out to Callum Wilson, because I've given a lot of slack, but he really put some work in that game and created a lot of space and opportunity. And it was just a real positive. And I'm really, really hoping that we just stick with that 11 this week, because I think one of the keys that we haven't had is consistency. I feel like we need to run 3 or 4 games with keeping that 11 together and really getting to know each other. Some subs made at the end, and actually that's where I started to panic, was when the subs came on, because you saw a little bit of a wobble from us, but then luckily got that third goal to kill the game off. Now, you talked about Burnley. I'm thinking this is going to be a really tricky game, similar to what I was saying about your game, George. It sort of helped us a little bit that Newcastle wanted to attack us, and it allowed a lot of space for Bowen and Paqueta to pick those pockets, and they're 2 quality players that are able to do so. I expect Burnley not to come at us quite as much, and to maybe be a bit more of a cagey affair. And I think it'll be a very even game. But I'm just going off of the positives and the morale at West Ham after a huge 3 points and wanting to build on that. And I'm really hoping that, like I said, people like Bowen and Paqueta are able to pick that squad up this week and say, right, we've got the quality, let's build on this. And for that reason, I'm going to back them for a 2-1 West Ham win. 2 on a bounce. Let's hope so, George. This is 6-pointer games, as you say. So, yeah, let's hope that I'm in a positive mood when we chat next, George.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to the very impressive Sunderland taking on Arsenal in a huge game this week.
I'm looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be a great game. I think we talked last week on the preview about, have Burnley got a chance against Arsenal? We said no. Have Sunderland got a chance against Arsenal is a very different question, because it's at the Stadium of Light. Arsenal have shown how good they are this season. They've still only conceded 3 goals, I think, in all competitions, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, genuinely, the fact that they've conceded 3 and played Man United, Man City, Liverpool. I think they have played City and Liverpool, haven't they? Yeah. Is absurd almost for a team to be that defensively solid. It's whether they get undone potentially by this Gyökeres injury that we talked about. Sunderland, there's something about that players wanting it almost, and I think Arsenal have got quite a bit of that this season. It's been building the last few years. But Sunderland, every single game, you can see they go into it and they want it. They play for the badge. They play for each other, which is massive as well. I got a bit of backlash for saying that Sunderland were lucky against Chelsea, and I spoke about it last week. But Sunderland don't win that game if they don't go out and play for each other. It's all about confidence in that kind of game, a game that you don't necessarily expect to win. And do you know what? They'll have confidence going into this one as well. They'll have confidence that they're going to get something out of it, and they'll want to win. Arsenal, though, you can't look past the quality of them. I'd love to see Sunderland get a result. I think it's in them to get a result. But if I'm predicting to be right, if you look at chances, I'm going to go for Arsenal to edge it. It's going to be 2-1. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a very late goal from Arsenal. But I think Sunderland will take him all the way. I'd love to see them win, but I don't think they will.
Yeah, this is sort of one of those head over heart sort of games. I think, like you say, Sunderland have been super impressive, so well organised. We talked earlier, but the influence that Xhaka's had over that side is just impressive. What a signing that has been. Just the physicality, and they look like a team. They look like they're all battling for each other. And I think they will give Arsenal a real game this weekend. But I just think Arsenal have got too much quality at the moment. And Arsenal will be very aware that Manchester City have started to win some games, and they will be wanting to really take a dominant control of the top of that league come Christmas, putting themselves in a very good position. We've seen Arsenal slip away too many times, and I'm starting to think this is the season they won't. There seems something about them, a little bit of an air around them at the moment. I think it will be a closer game than this scoreline is going to suggest, but I've gone for a 3-1 Arsenal win. I just think there's a little bit of quality. And like you said, George, I wouldn't be surprised if at half-time this game is 1-1. But I just think that Arsenal have got that extra gear that they can find at the moment. I said in a podcast earlier on, George, that that Newcastle game was the turning point for me, where I went from Arsenal being Arsenal of the last couple of seasons to, they've got the extra gear. And I think this is one of them games where they're going to need it. But I'm going for a 3-1 Arsenal win. Okay, so we'll move on now to Chelsea versus Wolves. Chelsea coming off of that win at Spurs last weekend, and Wolves desperate for points. Is this the week?
Oh, do you know what? Chelsea, again, have a real opportunity in this one to keep themselves in this, whether you call it a title race, whether you call it a top four race. The fact that Arsenal are 6 points clear of Manchester City in second almost makes them seem like they're running away with it a little bit, but it can all change so very, very quickly. There's so many teams sitting on 17 or 18 points, and Chelsea, this is a game that they have to win if they want to stay in the conversation for potentially challenging for the title. And the reason I say that is because, look, if it's a game against maybe Spurs or Man United or something like that, then maybe you don't say that, but it's the side at the bottom of the league. And this is the kind of game that you have to win, because you have to take the points that you can get against these sides, which allow you to potentially slip up in other games. I mean, it's a real opportunity for Wolves, because Chelsea have shown that they are beatable at Stamford Bridge this season. Look, we've seen with Sunderland. Can Wolves get a bit of that fighting spirit in them? New manager coming in, real opportunity for that. Even if they can pull a draw out of it, they did it at Spurs. So I think Wolves will go into this one hoping for the best, almost. I can't see him winning. I struggle to see them drawing realistically. Again, I'm talking on being realistic. I'd love to see them get something, but I think Chelsea will have too much quality for them. They slipped up against Karabakh in midweek. You've got to remember that. They have played midweek, so that just slightly changed things. But they're at home. They're against the bottom of the league side. They should win it. I'm going to go Chelsea 2, Wolves 0.
Yeah, if Wolves had brought in a new manager this week and there was a chance of that new manager bounce, as we often talk about, I think I would have been thinking of the possibility of a draw here and a slip up for Chelsea. But there's been no real progression at Wolves or no movement on that such. And Chelsea were very, very good against Tottenham last week. A lot of chances created. The size of that squad is almost like an extra sort of boost for them at size, because the rotation that they've got, and like you said, they've played midweek, but they're able to rest 5 players and still put out a strong 11. And sometimes to their advantage, sometimes to their detriment, where they don't necessarily know their best 11, let's say. But I've seen enough from Chelsea to know that there's goals in them. And I think this week will be a really comfortable week for them. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Chelsea win. And I think Wolves bang in trouble. Okay, let's pick up now on Aston Villa versus Bournemouth. An interesting tie, this one, George.
Yeah, Villa come into this one off the back of really good form, and then a disappointing loss to Liverpool last week. And I say disappointing because they had the chances. They hit the woodwork 3 times or something. And I thought that Liverpool really probably should have been punished. Villa could have got something out of that game. No arguments about it. They didn't, and that's what happens in football sometimes. But I don't think that will take away from the confidence that they'll have in this game, being at Villa Park again. Of course, Villa play Europa League Thursday night, so that makes it a little bit more difficult because opponents Bournemouth have had the full week off. Bournemouth with a loss, of course, against Manchester City last week, but they still showed themselves up quite well. You've got to remember that was Bournemouth's first loss since the opening game of the season. Bournemouth has still showed their quality and did equalise against City. Haaland was on it, but they stayed in the game for a long time. So Bournemouth will come into it with confidence as well. And I just look at these two sides. I see similarities, particularly in the Villa of old and the Bournemouth of now, in just being a side that can go anywhere and have confidence and take points off teams. And I think they'll just be looking to take points off each other. I think it's evenly matched. And that's why it's going to be a draw. I'm going Aston Villa 2, Bournemouth 2.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close one, George, but I just think Villa have showed a bit of goal-scoring prowess lately, and they've been creating opportunities left, right and centre in the last couple of games. I sat and watched them again at the weekend, and just impressed with what they sort of gave in that game and the sort of energy that they seem to have found. After struggling for goals in those first few games of the season, they seem to have really hit a bit of a rhythm again now. And I think they might just have slightly too much for Bournemouth. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win and a big win on sort of the path to possible Champions League European football for Aston Villa. Another game now, and teams looking for points. We've got Brentford versus Newcastle. For me, George, I think this could be a very closer game again. Both teams desperate to pick up some points. George, what are you thinking?
12th versus 13th doesn't get any closer than that, does it? Brentford come into this one off a loss to Crystal Palace, just as Newcastle come in to it with a loss against West Ham. So both will be disappointed going into this one and looking to make things right. It's the kind of game where both teams actually are in a position where if they do win it, they put themselves right amongst the chasing pack of European football almost. It can be so tight at the moment. I think Brentford will come into this one looking at it as a game at home in which just another opportunity to clear any relegation worries. We've talked about Brentford as potentially being a side in danger at the start of the season. They've had some fantastic results in recent weeks, which has steered them away from that. A win in this one, again, would be massive for them to drop those worries of relegation. Newcastle, on the other hand, they need something to get their season going. They really do. They had a good result in the Champions League in midweek, which is massive for them. But away from home again, Newcastle have continued to struggle away from home. I'm not sure Newcastle have won a game away from home yet this season. So that's the difficulty for them. They need to find the formula to go and win away from home. We know that they have had it in previous years, but they're struggling at the moment. Voltemada's scoring, which is good. The fact that you've got a new striker that's come in and is finding the back of the net. But we need to see something like Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes, Anthony Elanga getting goals. I mean, Anthony Elanga has not scored a club goal since he did it against Manchester United in March last year. And he went for 55 million. And if we're talking about transfer flops, then do you put him in there? Because for that kind of money, you should have at least got a couple of goal contributions by now. And look, I would love to see Elanga do well. This is no hate towards Elanga whatsoever, just because he left Manchester United and went and did well at Forest. So I think Newcastle need to get something going forward. We need to start seeing them scoring goals. They've not scored as many goals as we were used to seeing them score. Brentford, on the other hand, of course, have got a really good opportunity to get themselves out of trouble. So I'm going to go for Brentford to win this. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I just don't see any confidence in the Newcastle team in the moment away from home, and I think that's what will tip this one in Brentford's favour.
Yeah, Champions League hangover, I can see this being for Newcastle. Well, like you said, a good win for them in sort of midweek, but they haven't got a massive squad. like Chelsea. And I just think the sort of tired legs, an urgency to get a win now, I would say, after sort of losing to West Ham. They really need to kickstart their season. Otherwise, it's looking like a disappointing one at the moment. I've got to be in a close, cagey affair. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. We can't separate them barely in the league, and I don't think we're going to be able to separate them here. I don't think either side will want to lose this game, and I think it'll end up being a stalemate. So I'm going to go for a 1-1. So moving on to two teams that I've enjoyed watching actually this season, because both have been really entertaining, quite free-flowing and goal-scoring sides. And let's talk about Crystal Palace versus Brighton.
Well, then, Crystal Palace, I mean, we've seen so much quality from them in recent weeks, but they've struggled for results. But then they got a win against Brentford last week, which is massive for them, just to bring confidence back into the side. Brighton come into this one, of course, off the back of a big win over Leeds, which is a game that they could have easily struggled in. And this is one of the little Premier League derbies that often get talked about less. So I think it'll be a good one to watch. I think there's a little bit of fight in this one between these two sides. Both who have been quite happy to score goals this season. Palace with 14, Brighton with 17. So I think we're going to see some goals in this game. Mateta has started scoring week in, week out. Now we got a hat-trick, of course, against Bournemouth, scored last week as well. He's getting into form. Palace just look like a good side. I really hope that they can continue on this form and stake a claim for a European spot. Brighton could easily sneak themselves back in there after 3 wins in the last 5. Again, I think it's going to be one that is quite possibly tight. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Palace win. I think there'll be a lot of chances. As I said, we've seen a lot of goals from these two. I think there'll be a lot of chances. I think there'll be 2 pretty good goalkeeping performances as well. Dean Henderson's been fantastic for Palace this season. Bart Verbruggen's got some... He's a proper goalkeeper. He's got some good saves in him. So I think we're going to see a really entertaining game, end-to-end stuff, lots of opportunities, but Palace will edge it 2-1.
Yeah, I think that Palace will be looking at this again, sort of to kick on after that win last week. And I think they will stake a claim for European football. And this will be sort of their statement game. I think they will win 3-1 against Brighton. And I think the reason I'm saying that, I think they've just got a little bit too much potency and quality in the forward line. And I think they're slightly better defensively than a lot of people are giving them credit for as well. They've been pretty well organised back there. So I'm going to back Crystal Palace. I'm going to give them a 3-1 win. And will we be seeing a win this week for Nottingham Forest, who take on Leeds? A huge game after a good point versus Manchester United for Forest. But can they kick on and get all 3?
I don't know. It's a really tough one to predict because Forest have started to get their act together a little bit under Sean Dyche and looked good in spells last week against Manchester United. Had quite a strong second half until United got the equaliser, came out really quickly, which is important. But can they kick on? They've, of course, got some wins in Europe. They play in the Europa League tonight as of recording. If they can get a result in that, then it would be a big momentum shift. Leeds come into it. We were talking about Leeds probably before the last run of 4 games and saying, they're in a pretty good season. It's a pretty good start so far. Like, there's a quite good possibility that they could stay up if they keep this up. And they've struggled in recent weeks. And I say struggle because I would discount that Spurs game out of it because it's probably one that they wouldn't say they were going to win. But you're looking at the games against Brighton and against Burnley that really, that should be one that you win. Beat West Ham, which is, of course, a good result, but they need to find a win in a game like this against a side that's struggling again to just build that gap between them and the relegation zone. Again, just like Brentford, they'll want to stay out of trouble. That's massive, particularly for confidence around the club as well. So which way do I see this one going? I think Forest come into it with more confidence than Leeds, with more momentum, particularly if they win tonight. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Forest win. Again, I still think there's holes in that Forest defence. I think there's opportunities to score, and I think Leeds will take them, but only once. So, yeah, Forest 2, Leeds 1.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit more positive. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Forest win. I think this is the game where Sean Dyche has to put his stamp nice and early on that side and say, look, I am going to grind out points. Sometimes the best way is the 4-4-2, sort of block the pitch up and play for a sort of back to basics. And with Gibbs White scoring against Manchester United, I think it's really important to get him back scoring. And I think this is a real sort of kick on from a good point. And yeah, a 2-0 Forest win. I think it'll be relatively straightforward for them actually as well. I think Leeds might struggle against sort of a more physical side that I think Forest will put out this week. So yeah, I'm going to go confidently for Forest fans and I'm going to go for a 2-0 win. Okay, so we'll move on to our final game of this week and a big one. Manchester City versus Liverpool. Now, George, I know that you would love a stalemate here because it's better for you, but what do you actually see happening and what sort of impressed you about these two sides this year?
Oh, well, Man City are impressive going forward. I mean, Erling Haaland does look back to his best. You have to service him, and that's what City have been doing well this season. They struggled to do it against Aston Villa. And of course, they didn't end up scoring a goal that was allowed anyway, because Haaland did score right at the end, but it was ruled out, and that's when they did service Haaland. So I think when he has got the ball at his feet in good positions, in dangerous positions, we know what he does. He puts the ball in the back of the net. That showed by Man City being the side in the league that have scored the most goals this season on 20. Liverpool, on the other hand, massive, massive win for them and a great win in midweek against Real Madrid. Fully deserved. Forced Thibaut Courtois into 8 saves or something, which is absolutely ridiculous. They had so many chances and a world-class goalkeeper stopped them from scoring more. But I wasn't particularly impressed with Liverpool against Aston Villa last week. I think that was a game which they could have quite easily not won. And I still think I don't know what it is at Liverpool, whether it's a hangover from last season. We spoke last week about still the Jota stuff affecting it. There's obviously a few big key players in there. You're thinking about Mo Salah, players like that who had a real good relationship with him. And I suppose that when you've won your first 5 games, you start to forget a little bit. And then as soon as a bit of negativity creeps back in, all the different things start to creep in there. So I do think that there's probably still a presence, but I don't think it can be used as an excuse. I think particularly when they've spent 450 million, there's no excuse for Liverpool to be losing 4 in a row in the way that they did. And even then, when have we seen Liverpool with a good, solid, comfortable performance in the Premier League this season? I don't think we have in any game. So they'll be looking to turn up to the Etihad and do what sometimes they've done best in the last few years, which is get a result, and that can be a draw. I don't think they will, though. I think defensively, look, they were brilliant in midweek against Real Madrid defensively, but I think that Man City side has shown that they can break them down in the past, and I think they'll do it again. I think City will win this. I think they'll win it. I think they'll win it fairly comfortably scoreline-wise. I'm going to go for 3-1. There could be surprises, but I'm not expecting them.
Yeah, I think there's goals in this game, George. I think both teams are better going forward than they are at the back. I think that's fair to say. And we've got Haaland scoring for fun at the moment, but also Liverpool are getting more and more goals after sort of a bit of a shaky spell. And I think this week I'm going to see the real push from Manchester City. I predicted them at the start of the season to win the league, and I still think they will be in the title race. I do think where we are now, Arsenal are showing that quality and maybe it's enough to get them over the line. But I think City will be a lot closer than some people maybe predicted or expected. And I think this will be a bit of a statement from them. I'm going to go for a 3-2 Manchester City win. I think it'll be a close game, but I've got City to steal it late on and to take all 3 points. So, George, that's us run through this week's previews. But before we go, as always, a nice segment we like to end with is your player to watch this week, George. So do you want to start?
I'll start us off, and I'm going to start with a man that is is going to be in one of the games that I'm looking forward to most this week. It's Arsenal versus Sunderland, and it's the return to the Gunners of Granit Xhaka, a player who, of course, you mentioned, Gregor, has been such a massive player this season for Sunderland, one of the signings of the summer. And the stability that he brings to Sunderland in that midfield, the experience that he brings, it's second to none. And I think that he is one that could, if Sunderland are going to get something out of this game, it's probably going to be because of him. If they can win that midfield battle, then, I mean, who knows what could happen. If they do win it, then that really helps Sunderland in getting a result. So I think it's going to be really interesting. Could there be a red card in there for him against his former club? We know that Xhaka has a tendency to pick them up. We'll see. It's going to be fantastic to watch. So he is my player to watch for this week.
Love that pick, George. And another midfielder for me, and I'm picking very biasly, but Freddie Potts. Freddie Potts, what can I say? After last week's performance, really staked a place in that side for me. A composed performance by a young man. And it gives me real vibes of a Michael Carrick, a Scott Parker, somebody that just goes about their job expertly, very mature, sort of watching the game. You can see that he's got a football brain. And he needs to be a man that is given a run in this side now. I had a conversation with a colleague this week, and I said, for me now, after just last week's performance, he would be the third name on my team sheet, only behind Bowen and Paqueta. I really think he is going to be a man in this West Ham side for years to come, but he needs to be given a consistent run. So let's support him, and let's get Freddie Potts as my player to watch this week. George, pleasure as always. That rounds up game week 11, if you can believe it.
It's going quick. It's going quick.
Absolutely, George. So let's hope for a good week, and let's hope for some correct score predictions, George. And I look forward to catching up on the next one.
Cheers, Greg.